Hi guys, so today I'm here to talk about names from the Hunger Games trilogy. And some of you might remember that about a year ago I actually did a video on names from the Hunger Games, but I recently reread the series and realized that there were so many interesting and just names that I thought were worth mentioning that I hadn't talked about in that video. So I've decided to redo the video and talk about a wider range of names that are used in the Hunger Games trilogy. Suzanne Collins is the author of the Hunger Games, and she obviously took inspiration from a lot of different sources when she was choosing the names for her characters. She uses names of plants, she uses word names, she uses created or made up names, Old Greek and Latin names, Shakespearean names, mythology names. She really takes inspiration from a lot of different places, but somehow all of the characters' names seem to work very well together. So I'm going to start with some of the female names that I thought were interesting. The main character's name is Katniss, and Katniss is actually a plant name. It is a plant in the Sagittaria genus. And I think this name works really, really well for that specific character. However, I don't think it's that usable for a real child. I wouldn't recommend calling your daughter Katniss, no matter how much you do love the Hunger Games. The next name I have, I think, is a little bit more usable, and that is Primrose. And Prim in the books is Katniss's sister. She goes by the nickname Prim, although you could also use the nickname Rose. And this is, of course, an English flower name. The next name I have is Rue, and Rue is just such a wonderful character. Rue is also a plant name. It's the name of an herb, and I think this name would make a really, really great middle name. I think it is just a really cute one-syllable name. The next name I have is Hazel, and I love the name Hazel. I love how it's kind of quirky and old-fashioned, but this is like hazel with a very sophisticated L ending. So I really like that, and it means the hazel tree. The next name I have is Lavinia, and this is an old Latin name that means woman of Rome. And I really like this name. I think it sounds very antique-like, but I think it's definitely ready for a comeback. Then there's Octavia, and Octavia is one of my personal favorite names. It's in my personal favorite top 10 girls' names. It's a Latin name that means eighth. One of the more normal names that Suzanne Collins chose was Johanna, and Johanna is a lovely German name, and it means God is gracious. Then there's Tigris, and Tigris is a Latin name that means tiger, and I think you'd have to be very, very brave to use the name Tigris, although I do think it is usable. And Tigris is also the name of a river that runs through Iraq. The next name is really out there. I'm not sure how usable it is, but I thought it was really interesting, and that is Glimmer. And Glimmer is obviously an English word name that means sparkling. And I kind of think of names like Crystal and Diamond when I hear the name Glimmer, but I don't think it's that usable. One that is really usable though is Cecilia, and Cecilia is a beautiful, beautiful name. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the greatest meaning. It means blind, but if the meaning isn't a big deal for you, then Cecilia is a wonderful, wonderful choice. The next name I have is Madge, and Madge is a diminutive of Margaret. I think Madge by itself is very spunky and cool, but I still prefer it as a diminutive of Margaret. And Margaret and Madge mean pearl. Then there's Portia, and I've always loved this name since I was a little girl. I've loved this name. It's actually an old Roman clan name. One that I found really interesting was Cressida, and Cressida was one that I hadn't really heard before. It's actually a medieval name that means golden, and I think it's usable. And the last girl's name I have is Bonnie, and Bonnie is just very sweet and precious. It's an English name that means pretty girl. So there are two main male characters in the Hunger Games trilogy. One of them is named Gale, and Gale I think is a really interesting name. I know a lot of older women named Gale, spelled G-A-I-L, but I love this spelling as a masculine name, and it's actually an English surname that means pleasant or merry. And again, I think this would be a really cool middle name choice. The other main male character is named Pita, and I don't think this is that usable. It reminds me of pita bread, but it actually is a Scandinavian name that means rock. Then there's Finnick, and I'm pretty sure that Suzanne Collins just made up the name Finnick, but I absolutely love it, and if it wasn't so similar sounding to the word finicky, I would definitely consider putting it on my list. I think it's a great alternative to names like Finley or Finnegan or Phineas if you're looking for a really, really out there Finn name. Another name I thought was interesting was Thresh, and Thresh is actually the word used to describe a certain agricultural process. But I think it's a really, really cool sounding one-syllable boy's name. Then there's Rory, and I love Rory for a boy. I actually went to school with a boy named Rory, and Rory is an Irish name that means Red King. However, it is being used more and more for girls, especially as a nickname for Aurora. The next two names are Castor and Pollux, and both of these names come from Greek mythology. Castor means to shine or excel, and Pollux means very sweet. And in Greek mythology, Castor and Pollux were twins, but they actually had different fathers. So Castor was the son of a mortal man, and Pollux was the son of the god Zeus. So they were obviously very close, and then when Castor was dying, Pollux sacrificed half of his immortality to save his brother. So Zeus turned them into stars, and I think that's just a very sweet story, and I think you would have to be very, very brave to use these names, but I think they would make very cool twin names if you were brave enough to use them. The next name I have is Cato, and Cato isn't the nicest character in the Hunger Games, but I thought his name was really interesting, and I love names that end in O. Cato is a Latin name that means wise. The next name I had to include just because it was so weird, and that is blight. And the word blight actually is a disease or injury of a plant. So like I said, she really got her inspiration from a lot of different places. I don't think blight is usable, but I thought it was worth mentioning. The next name is Cinna, and Cinna is definitely one of my favorite characters from the Hunger Games. Cinna is of unknown origin or meaning, but there was also a Shakespearean character whose name was Cinna, and kind of like the Cinna in the Hunger Games, the Cinna in Shakespeare was trying to start a rebellion. And the last male name I have is Seneca. And again, Seneca in the books isn't the greatest guy, but I thought the name was really, really interesting, and it's actually the name of a Native American Indian tribe. So I thought that was cool. Obviously, Suzanne Collins just took names from everywhere, and somehow they all really seem to work together. So let me know what your favorite names from the Hunger Games series are if you've read them. And if you haven't read them, I highly recommend them, and I'm very, very excited for the movie. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you later. Bye.